The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
This is Florida Man News, the worst headlines from the Sunshine State on the Florida Podcast Network. I'm your host, Joel Lounds. Coming up in this episode, Florida man was a major league monkey merchant. Florida woman slung a synthetic serpent at a snooping spook. Florida man's NFT was DOA, now he's SOL. And Florida man can't tell the difference between a breaking bottle and a gunshot. Good thing he's a deputy. Plus, Florida man trivia and much, much more. Our lead story tonight. A Florida man broke a beer bottle over his head, prompting a deputy who thought the popping sound was a gunshot to shoot him. The Polk County Sheriff's Office reported on Saturday. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd said deputies were trying to arrest the 27-year-old Florida man when it happened, as he was a suspect in a series of crimes, including an armed robbery. The Florida man was in a pickup when he stood through the sunroof with a rifle in one hand and a bottle of Busch Light in the other. He then broke the bottle over his head. The sergeant who was behind the Florida man and unable to see the bottle heard the popping noise and believed the Florida man had shot at his deputies, the sheriff's office said in a news release. The sergeant fired one shot at the Florida man, striking him in the neck. The Florida man was taken to a hospital with injuries that were not believed to be life-threatening. No deputies were injured, the agency reported. The bizarre chain of events began around 8:19 a.m. Saturday when the Florida man and a female companion went to a supermarket in Winter Haven in a white Chevy Tahoe. There, the Florida man stole a red Toyota pickup. The Tahoe was later found abandoned on State Road 540 east of Thornhill Road, deputies said. At about 8:45 a.m., the Florida man and his companion went into a tire store near Winter Haven and asked an employee for money. When the employee said no money was there, the Florida man pulled a rifle out of a duffel bag, pointed the weapon at the employee, and started looking for money. The Florida man and his companion left when a customer arrived, deputies said. At some point, the Florida man and his companion separated. As deputies searched for the pair, the red pickup was seen on US 17 near Cypress Gardens Boulevard. Deputies tried to stop the truck with stop sticks, but their attempts were not successful. The Florida man who was behind the wheel tried to hit a deputy with the truck, deputies said. The Florida man entered the eastbound lane of State Road 540, where deputies were able to surround the truck, very close, by the way, to where the Tahoe had been abandoned. While in the truck, the Florida man pointed the rifle under his chin and told deputies to kill him. Deputies tried to de-escalate the situation, but the Florida man then stood up through the sunroof and held the gun, quote, in a threatening manner, unquote. Quote, he then dropped from the sunroof out of sight for a moment, then stood up with a rifle in one hand and the Busch Light beer bottle in the other, which he smashed against his forehead, breaking the bottle, unquote, the news release states. That's when the sergeant, thinking the popping sound was a gunshot, fired at the Florida man. Quote, thank God none of our deputies were injured today, unquote, said Sheriff Grady Judd. Quote, the suspect made several bad choices this morning, including the choice that forced our sergeant to shoot him, unquote. The Florida man, who faces multiple charges, has a criminal record that includes a charge of home invasion burglary and has spent 5 years in prison. Deputies are still trying to learn the identity of the female companion. In Carjacker Tracker news, a Florida man grabbed his wife's car and chased after 3 armed suspects accused of stealing his vehicle, according to a report. Driving a Dodge Caravan, the Florida man arrived in a parking lot off Commander Drive in Orlando when he was approached by 3 armed suspects. Police said the suspects were ages 14, 16, and 18. The Florida man told a dispatcher, the suspects, quote, aimed at me with a pistol, unquote. Police say the suspects took the Florida man's phone, wallet, and keys, then took off with his vehicle. But rather than stay put and wait for authorities, the Florida man hopped in his wife's car and chased after the carjackers. Quote, I'm running behind them, unquote, the Florida man reportedly said while on phone with the dispatcher. Quote, I'm driving too fast. I'm doing that because I don't want to lose them, unquote. The Florida man's wife, on the phone with police back at their home, said she was, quote, scared because my husband went after them in my vehicle, unquote. Police managed to catch up with the 3 suspects and arrest them. The 18-year-old suspect is charged with carjacking with a firearm, robbery, and grand theft. No details were provided about the other 2 suspects, who are minors. In lodger fraudster news, a Florida man is accused of using other people's hotel points to stay at a Hampton Inn in Hernando County for several days. HCSO responded to the Hampton Inn located in Spring Hill on May 27th on the report of a fraud. Hotel staff told deputies that the 25-year-old Tampa resident had been staying at the hotel since May 17th. During that time, management was notified he was using the Hilton Honors points of 7 different people to pay for his stay. The hotel was notified by a Hilton Honors member living in New York who was monitoring his account and reported fraudulent activity. Deputies contacted the Florida man at the hotel, revealing he used the Hilton Honors app to make the online hotel reservations, then using the Honors Points system to pay for the rooms. Authorities said that the Florida man accessed the victim's accounts using an online message app. The Florida man was arrested on a charge of criminal use of personal identification information. There may be additional charges pending contact with the 6 remaining victims who live all across the United States. He was taken to the Hernando County Detention Center, where he was initially held on a $2,000 bond. And in monkey business news, the owner of an exotic animal breeding business in Florida has been sentenced to 5 years probation for illegally selling a capuchin monkey to singer Chris Brown. A federal indictment doesn't name Brown, only identifying the buyer as a celebrity in California, but key details match an Associated Press report that wildlife agents seized the singer's pet monkey after serving a search warrant on his Los Angeles home in early January of 2018. Brown also was identified in court Wednesday at the sentencing hearing in Florida for the monkey breeder. Wildlife agents moved in after Brown shared a picture of the capuchin monkey with millions of his followers on Instagram. Prosecutors later dropped charges of possessing the monkey without a permit after Brown agreed to forfeit his rights to the monkey, named Fiji, and pay $35,000 for the monkey's care. As for the monkey breeder, a federal judge in Tampa on Wednesday ordered the Florida man to pay a $90,000 fine to a fund operated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Also, he has to serve 8 months of his probation in home confinement. According to the indictment, Brown paid $12,650 to the Florida man who operated the Monkey Whisperer Ranch in Parrish, Florida. Under both Florida and California laws, it is illegal to transfer a capuchin monkey without a permit. The Florida man pleaded guilty to conspiracy and 3 counts of violating the Endangered Species Act. Prosecutors also said he illegally sold endangered cotton-top tamarins to buyers in Alabama, South Carolina, and Wisconsin while trying to disguise the sales. Prosecutors had argued that the Florida man deserved more than a year of prison, citing the need to deter others from committing similar crimes. Quote, in addition to licensed monkey breeding activities, the Florida man frequently sold monkeys on the black market, they said in court papers. The Florida man, quote, engaged in illicit business practices or schemes that involved a pattern of repeated illegal conduct, unquote. The Florida man's lawyer described him, quote, a hard-working, law-abiding member of the community, unquote, who helped people deal with alcohol addiction and said that none of the monkeys were treated inappropriately or caused any adverse effects on the ecosystems involved. And now it's time for our weekly Florida Man trivia question. Here's the question. This Florida man died 51 years ago this week, becoming one of the most notorious members of the 27 Club, an infamous group of artists and musicians who pass away at the age of 27. Who is the Lizard King of psychedelic rock who left us on July 3rd, 1971? I'll have the answer after this message from our sponsor.
Flintstone Media has been the digital messaging bedrock of several brands and businesses, serving as a highly resourceful podcast production house and consultancy firm for over 6 years. Visit flintstonemedia.com for podcast samples. From show development and setup through recording and distribution, Work with a leader in the industry and add a new podcast to your brand's content offerings. That's FlintstoneMedia.com.
And now the answer to the Florida Man trivia question. Once again, that question was, this Florida man died 51 years ago this week, becoming one of the most notorious members of the 27 Club, an infamous group of artists and musicians who pass away at the age of 27. Who is the Lizard King of psychedelic rock who left us on July 3rd, 1971? The answer is Jim Morrison. The singer-songwriter for The Doors was found in the bathtub of his girlfriend's apartment in Paris, France. If you'd like to sponsor Florida Man Trivia, go to floridapodcastnetwork.com/contact and send us a message today. In Tail Gunner news, a Naples man was shot in the butt by his wife after he claimed she hit him with a car on Tuesday evening. The Florida man said he was riding his bike home from work along Radio Road near Sherbrooke Drive Tuesday evening. That's when the Florida woman, who the Florida man said is his wife, got in front of him with her car and slammed on the brakes. Quote, she happens to see me headed toward that way, pulls in front of me, hits the brakes really fast, and I hit the back of her car, he said. By the time he got back to his feet, he said the Florida woman pulled out and cocked a gun. Quote, my instinct was just to run at her, right? He said. Quote, I'm holding her hands and she's letting off rounds, shooting about 4 rounds. In the 5th round, she happens to weasel her way out, and that's when she shoots me back here. Unquote. The bullet hit him in his right butt cheek. It was a lucky shot, according to the Florida man. Quote, thank God the gunshot was in and out, he said. That's not all. The Florida man said his wife was screaming that he was robbing her. A good Samaritan stepped in, using their own taser to stun him. Quote, she comes down trying to protect her and she's tasing me, right? And I'm smacking her and I'm like, man, I got a gun. Chill, chill, chill. I'm the victim. My wife just shot me, he said. Quote, tell her to get a better taser because that's trash, unquote. So why would somebody shoot their husband? Well, the Florida man said the relationship has been going south ever since he came here. Quote, I moved down here from Houston, Texas to make my life with her, he said. She had a daughter that I loved as my own, unquote. That 8-year-old girl was in the car. She told police she saw her mom shoot him. Quote, that's my wife, right? I love her. She was good to me. She gave me a better life, bro. But she's crazy as F, unquote, the Florida man said. What's really crazy is that the Florida man was ready to put it all on the line. He was going to lie to deputies just so the woman who shot him wouldn't get in trouble. Quote, I'd tell the cops it's mine. I don't care. Just to protect my wife. That's my wife. As a husband, I'm supposed to stick it out to the end, and that's what I'm doing, unquote, said the Florida man. The Florida woman was arrested, and the Florida man went to the hospital. While this was the final straw, not even a bullet to the butt can shatter love. Quote, of course I'd like to spend the rest of my life with her. That's my baby. Till the toe tags, he said. My journey with her has come to the end. In Bad Grandpa news, a Florida man was part of a criminal group of schemers that preyed on grandparents in the Pittsburgh region, as well as in Georgia and Tennessee, by posing as a bail bondsman and collecting fees to get grandchildren released from jail, according to federal authorities. The 25-year-old Florida man, who is in custody in Monroe County, Georgia, is charged with wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. He was indicted in Pittsburgh on Thursday. The grand jury said the Florida man was part of a conspiracy preying on older people earlier this year in Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Tennessee. Typically, someone from the group called an elderly victim and pretended to be a lawyer, saying that a grandchild was in jail and needed money for bail and legal costs. In some cases, the conspirators impersonated the supposedly incarcerated grandchild in asking for money. They said there was also a gag order on the purported case, so the victim shouldn't discuss it with anyone. The criminals told the victims to withdraw money from their bank accounts and to lie if anyone at the bank asked them why they were withdrawing funds. The fraudsters then said a courier or bail bondsman would come by the house to pick up the money. The Florida man posed as the bondsman, visited victims at home, and collected money, the grand jury said. If the victims gave money to him, his criminal associates called the family later and asked for more money for various fees, authorities said. The Florida man is due in federal court in Pittsburgh to answer the charges on June 22nd. He will be held in Georgia until then. In sneaky snake news, a Florida woman was arrested after crashing into several cars and throwing a fake snake at pursuing police officers to avoid arrest, authorities said. The 5-mile chase began at about 10:15 a.m. Wednesday when the unidentified woman sped off at high speeds as authorities were trying to pull over a different vehicle in Martin County. A deputy then pursued the woman's pickup truck, which slammed on its brakes, forcing pursuing officers to swerve, authorities said. A civilian's vehicle was crashed into and overturned as the woman tried to hit police vehicles, authorities said. The woman took off again and attempted to hit 3 police cruisers before crashing into a civilian vehicle and causing it to flip and injure 3 other people. Quote, "She came out of the vehicle and instead of surrendering, she threw what looked like a real snake at our deputy," unquote, said Martin County Sheriff William Snyder. Snyder said the object, later determined to be a rubber snake, was thrown just moments after the deputy had holstered his gun. When the woman exited her vehicle, she threw what officers first thought was the real snake. Quote, "Fortunately for her, instead of re-engaging with the firearm, he goes for a taser and ends it right there," unquote, said Snyder. Quote, "If she had thrown that snake when the gun was out, we may be talking about a police officer-involved shooting right now," unquote. Police have charged the woman with aggravated assault and aggravated battery of a law enforcement officer. In crash balderdash news, a Florida man allegedly crashed his car into a Volusia County home on Sunday, and instead of reporting the crash, he falsely reported the car as stolen, according to the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. Deputies arrested the 20-year-old Deltona, Florida man on charges of leaving the scene of a crash with property damage and lying to law enforcement. Authorities said the deputy arrived at the Florida man's home on Normandy Boulevard at around 2 a.m. to take his report of his car being stolen. According to VCSO, the Florida man told the deputy that he parked his blue Honda Civic in his driveway around 9 p.m. Saturday and left it unlocked with his keys and wallet inside. Deputies entered the car as stolen and began an investigation. Later Sunday morning, deputies were called to a car that had crashed into a house on Normandy Boulevard, a few blocks from the Florida man's home. When deputies arrived, they found the Florida man's car partially wedged into the back of a house, causing significant damage. Deputies said no one was home at the time of the crash. The Florida man later admitted to investigators that he crashed the car and made up the story about the car being stolen, according to VCSO. Instead of reporting the crash and checking for anyone potentially injured inside the house, deputies said he walked home. VCSO said he had minor injuries that he may have received after the airbag deployed in the crash. The Florida man was taken to the Volusia County Jail but was released after posting $500 bond for a charge of leaving the scene and a $1,000 bond for a charge of providing a false police report. In ignored jape news, after spending $12,000 on Floyd Mayweather-endorsed NFTs that are now worthless, one Florida man is having major buyer's remorse. The 35-year-old Miami man said he's now struggling to afford gas and food amid rising inflation after purchasing the Bored Bunny non-fungible tokens, NFTs, promoted by his favorite boxer. He even shoveled some of his mom's money into the digital assets. Meanwhile, he said, Mayweather and other NFT shilling celebrities, quote, took their payouts and moved on while everyone who scraped by to invest in their futures got robbed, unquote. Styled similarly to the Bored Apes, whose value skyrocketed before taking a dive in recent weeks, the Bored Bunny NFT project promised investors they'd make, quote, 2x, 5x, maybe even 10x the value, unquote, of what they invested within a few days. Instead, the bunnies fell from around $1,500 per NFT to only around $100. The Bored Bunny creators claimed in tweeted statements that they'd received death threats from angry investors, many of whom bought after celebs like Mayweather, Jake Paul, DJ Khaled, and others convinced them to buy shortly before the NFT's value tanked. This sort of celebrity endorsement scheme isn't peculiar to the project either. In crypto world, it's called a rug pull, and it keeps on happening. In spite of the heat, the Bored Bunny folks don't seem that miffed about losing their investors an estimated $20.7 million and told NBC that it's not their fault investors didn't sell at the right time to make bank. Meanwhile, the Florida man told the news outlet that buying Bored Bunny NFTs has left him in ruins. Quote, this basically financially crippled me, unquote, said the Florida man. Who could have been able to predict that something that costs next to nothing to produce is sold for a price many thousands of times higher than the actual value of the asset, and can be infinitely copied with no discernible difference between the original and the copy, would be used to grift money from greedy rubes? It's almost time for our final story, but first, Florida Man News is a production of the Florida Podcast Network. Our executive producer is Jemmy Legagneur. You can find the show in your favorite podcast app or at floridapodcastnetwork.com, on Instagram and Twitter at FLPodcastNet, and you can find me at Joel from Florida. That's at Joel from FL. You can join our Florida Podcast Network Facebook group. Just search for FPN Insiders to get more info on Florida Man News and all our other shows. For comments or story suggestions, email me at joel@shadysidemedia.com. Florida Man News is provided for entertainment purposes only. Any similarity to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. No warranty or professional relationship is implied, and no refunds will be granted. Views expressed on this program are solely the opinions of the individuals who express them, and do not imply an endorsement by our sponsors, spouses, families, employers, ourselves, or the Florida Board of Tourism. Thanks for listening to Florida Man News. Here's our final story. A Florida man was arrested in Miami for eluding law enforcement and recklessly operating a jet ski on Sunday. According to an arrest affidavit, the 19-year-old Jacksonville, Florida man and rap artist known as Spot'em Got'em was arrested in Miami after officials noticed a jet ski in a restricted speed zone with posted signs. Spot'em Got'em allegedly then began doing S-turns near anchored boats. The responding official got Spot'em Got'em's attention, and the official called Spot'em Got'em over for a traffic stop, according to the arrest affidavit. When asked, Spot'em Got'em then accelerated and began swerving through boats and swimmers in the area. The arrest report goes on to say the official was attempting to stop Spot'em Got'em with lights and sirens, but Spot'em Got'em allegedly continued to flee. Officials were able to arrest Spot'em Got'em for the wanton disregard of safety of persons and property, boats, at a speed or in a manner as to endanger himself or others, the arrest report stated. Spot'em Got'em was charged with eluding a law enforcement officer and reckless operation. That's the news from the shady side of the Sunshine State. We'll be back next week with another heaping pile of Florida Man News. Quote, tell her to get a better taser because that's trash. What's really crazy is that the Florida man was ready to put it all on the line. He was going to lie to deputies. Shut up! By posing as a bail bondsman in Nala. Shut up! A few blocks from the Florida man's home. Would you stop? Quiet.